Well, thank you very much to the organizers for inviting us to come and talk to you in this session about accessibility in tourism and how that connects with what you're all doing, medical tourism. I'd just like to say also a word to the previous speaker. I think she's very gracious, very modest, and it was a very interesting and worthwhile project that we heard about there. So, what is accessible tourism, and why is tourism even relevant after we heard from our previous speaker that perhaps tourism isn't so relevant to the medical profession after all? But we really believe it is, and we really believe that accessible tourism is an important element that you need to bring into your offer. And we'll try and explain why. Anybody can enjoy a tourism experience, or should be able to enjoy a tourism experience. When we say accessible tourism, we're not talking about one kind of tourism for one kind of people. We're talking about making environments, venues and services suitable for the widest range of possible visitors. And that includes, of course, people with disabilities, but also families with small children, older people, and at some time, any of us who can be temporarily disabled or impaired. And of course, many of us who are traveling for wellness and health tourism might be in these circumstances. We said in one of the projects that we did many years ago, tourists come in all shapes and sizes. And it's up to the tourism sector to find ways to let them in, to inform them that you're open to them coming, and to make the right adjustments. And of course, this slide here, it doesn't show you all those invisible impairments that the majority of disabled people have. The majority of disabilities are not visible. And why are we talking about accessible tourism? Because actually there is a change going on in the market. Because of demographic aging, there's an increasing demand for access, as I'll show you in a moment, and also accessibility can improve the quality of the product, and it can give people better value for money. If you are focused on accessible tourism, it brings a higher quality to the tourism business. And thirdly, there is a legal imperative that since 2006, the United Nations has 160 countries in the world have signed up to the United Nations Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities. And this means countries are implementing legislation to make sure that goods and services are accessible to people with disabilities. They must be accessible to people with disabilities, and they must also be in an equitable way, treated in an equitable way. So, some years ago, we did a project on this subject for the European Commission, with European Commission money, a group of stakeholders who were interested in promoting accessible tourism as a sort of B2B advisory project. And we made a website, accessibletourism.org, and we turned ourselves into an NGO with a mission to make European tourism destinations, products and services accessible to all travelers, and to promote accessible tourism around the world. And we were doing that because the demand and the supply just simply don't match. There's too little supply and an over demand in this sector. Just a couple of words about ENAT, the European Network for Accessible Tourism. So it's a non-profit organization founded in Belgium, and we have what we call, I said, a multi-stakeholder consortium behind it. We have an international board of directors from 11 countries, and it's open to all organizations and people who support our statutes. We have about 100 members, paying organizations that are part of the network, but we have more than 1,300 members who are associated with the organization. And we have several products that we use to try to enhance the quality of the tourism offer. So we have an ENAT Code of Good Conduct, a self-regulating mechanism, if you like, that people can sign up to when they join ENAT. We've created an accessible tourism directory for Europe, which you'll hear about from my colleague Katarina in a moment. And of course we have the website, and we use social media to get our message across. We are developing accessibility programs in the hospitality sector, training people, training businesses, training destination managers, and we're launching an ENAT quality label, which we hope will be a way of, at a global level, of labeling facilities that meet our criteria. This is just a slide showing you a few of our members who range from national tourist boards right through to the smallest bed and breakfast that wants to make itself more accessible. And we might ask ourselves then, if the tourism sector is so focused on customers and giving people what they need, why are they not doing this for people with access needs? And just how serious is the situation of this undersupply? Because we hear from so many customers, so many people traveling, that they have a disappointing experience, they have a bad experience if they come somewhere where they're expecting to find good access and it's not there. We did a study for the European Commission, which was published just last year, and we found that on the business side, but also in the public sector, there's a lack of awareness about the importance of accessibility. There's a lack of knowledge and skills how to deal with it, and so people keep away from this issue. There's correspondingly a lack of experience, and there's also generally a misunderstanding that accessibility is going to cost you a lot of money. We have to invest a lot, we have to build a lot, we have to change everything, and that's one of the biggest misunderstandings, that there are good returns on investment. We know there are good returns on investment from many case studies that we've done, and this message isn't getting across. There is a good business case here. So from our study, we found that only 9% of European tourism suppliers actually advertise the accessibility of their offer. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't good accessibility in more than that. So we were only counting, we were trawling the web, we were data mining, we were looking at accessibility information schemes in different countries of Europe, but we came up with a number about 298,000 suppliers who have some clear, well-defined, accessible offers. And this is covering the full range of disabilities and impairments and so on. So that means about 3 million tourism businesses in Europe are not prepared to cater adequately for this market. And by 2020, there'll be an additional 1.2 million enterprises that need to provide accessible offers. And for us, we see training in the hospitality sector as a key element. Training is the cheapest investment that you get the most return for. And that's the thing that we're really pushing hard. So with European funding, we're working in the Erasmus Plus programs to develop training in different countries with suppliers and for suppliers. And this training is actually now, since 2014, it's 100% funded by the European Commission. So if you can get into a training program with us or with others working in this sector, it's a good opportunity for you. I'm going to talk about visitors and suppliers and destinations, because you have to work on all these levels, all these aspects to improve the quality of tourism for all. Some numbers for you here, and I put all these numbers in. I won't go through everything, but this is so that in the presentation that's on the website afterwards, you can you don't have to keep all these notes. But it's a very big market. If you think not only of people with disabilities, but the older segment as well, actually 2/3 of the accessible tourism market is made up of older people, age 65 and above, and only about 36% in 2011 were people with disabilities who were traveling, 138 million people in Europe. And we know that above 10 million people in UK, France, Germany, and Italy have access needs. In 2012, these people did a total of 783 million trips within the European Union, and demand is anticipated to grow at an average rate of 1.2%. I'm just going to pick out seniors again, because they're 65% or 60-something percent of the accessible tourism market. That's 1 in 5 people in Europe, over 60. And what is it about these people? Because they're different from the older generations, our parents and grandparents. The people today of this age, they want to travel, enjoy life, and stay well. So this is a market that also travels very often. Older people from Europe take 6 to 7 trips a year. They have most discretionary income, and they're more active and youthful. So they still want to do maybe dangerous things too, adventure tourism, and they take most overseas trips as well. So this is a very salient market. We have to respond to this market, but there is a connection between aging and disability. This simple graph shows you from the World Report on Disability 2011 that as we get older, the disabilities arrive. We will get some slight impairments. So by the time you are something like 65 years old for men, 30% of the population have some kind of disability, and for women it's more. So that's a fact of life, and that's a fact that we have to bring into our calculations, bring into our offers. The other thing that makes this a lucrative market, I suppose, is that people with a disability or an access need, they travel with companions. They tend not to travel by themselves. The factor for people with disabilities is 2.2. The factor for the elderly population, 1.6. I'll just show you quickly some numbers from Visit England. Because if there's one thing, sorry, I'm English, but if there's one thing English people are good at, it's counting stuff. And not many tourist boards actually count the number of people in the accessible tourism market. But Visit England has been doing this for a couple of years, and they see that people with disabilities, does this work? They have more overnight trips. They stay longer, 3.3 nights on average instead of 2.9, and they spend more money on their trips. And the market size for England, based on this visitor survey, shows that 14 million trips were taken in 2012, and the segment of the market is about 11-12% of the total market. This slide always interests people because it shows that in this accessible market, actually people with a long-term illness make up the largest part of the traveling market. So it's people, as I said before, you can't see they have a disability, but 47% of the travelers in a group where somebody has a disability have a long-term illness. Then comes a general mobility impairment at 25%, not the wheelchair users, by the way. 24% deaf or partial hearing loss, 9% with learning difficulties, 8% blind or partially sighted, and only 6% of all of these travelers are actually wheelchair users. So we can take away the image of everybody coming in a wheelchair when we say accessible. So that's just the numbers repeated for you. Now, how do businesses respond to this, and what should they be doing? The key thing about traveling when you have access needs is that everything needs to be joined up. Everything needs to work for you. So that starts with information, looking at bookings and websites. It goes to the transport, the infrastructure, services. Everything needs to be suitable for people with different access requirements. And that's why we need to work with each of these parts of the value chain to ensure that people are doing their job properly and handing over nicely to the next. And this goes for anybody, whether they're going for adventure tourism or medical tourism. But it's something that's so overlooked that it's hardly believable. We have to work on all of these things to make information, transport, infrastructure, and services more accessible. That's just putting the message across to you, but you'll hear more about how that's done from our next speaker. So why are destinations important as well? Because destinations are responsible for the marketing of a place. And we tend to overlook this fact. We think that if we're good at our job, we're supplying a wellness resort, we are good at what we do, that we won't need any help. But actually, it's important for the reputation of a business that it belongs to a destination that has a good reputation. I think we heard that actually yesterday. And I think when that is recognized, it's important that the destination management organizations, it may be a city, a region, even a country, has to learn to brand itself as an accessible destination. Accessibility must be part of your brand. And to do that, we say actions are needed on every level. So we need to have an international awareness of where we stand in the accessibility scale. Are we an accessible country? Do we have accessible offers here? And this works right down to the tourism businesses. These levels of responsibility reinforce each other and support each other. We say then there are many benefits to destinations and to businesses of focusing on accessibility, improving quality, finding new market opportunities, becoming more competitive, showing social responsibility, having more of these repeat visits, which are a feature of this market, but we're also showing how we can change to respond to the changing market. And of course, accessibility is also part of economic and social and environmental sustainability. We think it's very important then that businesses should recognize the value and get on board with accessibility. That's what we try to help them do. But of course there are obvious benefits to the visitors, as I've been saying, that the services become more personalized because you have to know the detail of what an individual wants in order to give a good service. It also means people can travel with their families and friends, which they couldn't do before, and it means that people are going to get unique, customized experiences. This is the way we're going. We're personalizing travel much more and giving people unique experiences. So if you're running a health a clinic or care center, people are coming for an operation, for a procedure, for a treatment, but they bring their families with them, and the families want to enjoy the tourism too. So it's important to think of everybody in your market. So just to reinforce the message, I'll just show you a short video, and then I'm finished. This is presentations from a short video that we made from a conference called Mind the Accessibility Gap in 2014. And here you'll hear some people who are talking about why they got interested in this area. They're business people, most of them, and they will tell you why they got interested and why they wanted to get something back from this market. Let's see, did I go the wrong way? Just have to get on here and go. Okay, you're going to hear me again, sorry. I think people in the tourism business in general should be very interested in accessible tourism, because this will become a stronger and stronger factor in what attracts people to come to Europe. If they see other parts of the world are easier to travel to, are more welcoming, more comfortable, it'll be a hard choice to go to Europe if they see that it's difficult to get around and people don't really understand my needs.
1 in 5 people have an access need now when they're going away on holiday, and if you don't cater for those needs, then those people won't travel, they won't go on holiday, and they won't spend their money in your country and your destination. So it's vital for the growth of tourism and the economy that we embrace accessible tourism.
We must go to the school, we must do the education about it, we must speak with the enterprises, and we must do all our efforts to let them understand that accessibility is not something for healthy, but it's something that is good for the territory, is good for the economy, and is good for tourism.
Accessibility training is a must, not only at an airport where it's regulated, but any industry, any basically company that deals with tourism or the public in general should definitely invest in accessibility and awareness training, because you need to know the needs and the barriers faced by these people to be able to offer good customer service. And that's what it all comes down to, good customer service. That's what makes people come back.
It is really about creating a seamless stream of accessible offers from the booking stage or pre-booking stage information until when you come back home.
You don't know who your next client is going to be, and if you work in the tourism industry, you need to be able to adapt to the needs of your customers, and you don't know who's going to walk through the door next and what their needs are and what their requirements are.
In the cases that we have studied, in between 1.5 years and 3 years, all the investments in accessibility and design for all are paid back. Then that means that this is a very good business.
There's a high level of loyalty, so we know that some of the clients that they have with the limitations are coming back again and recommending. So this is an interesting contribution to the business, especially in this economic context.
We're seeing that everything we're doing is really paying back very, very fast. I know when we was doing education in 2005 on 50 hotels in Sweden, we was really seeing that it was payback just in the first year.
In the end, investing in a segment such as the disability market will reap a lot of returns. So you're not just being a good person, which is good to be a good person, but you're actually going to end up with more revenue and more profit and better bottom line. So it just seems a win-win-win.
One person of one group decides what the whole group can do, and we have a lot of conferences and meetings in our town and all the things. Mostly you have 2, 5, 4 people which need special help, and they decide, or they have to decide what the whole group is possible to do.
Goodwill is very strong as a motor, but envy is also a very strong one. And if somebody sees that somebody else is receiving high marks for accessibility as a quality standard, people want the same.
We have to complement and support what member states do. But I believe we have, within this job description, what we have to do, there is a lot that we can do, and certainly this is an agenda that we want to take further.
Okay, so I think, I hope I've given you a clear message that for visitors, for businesses and for destinations, as Martin said, it's a win-win-win to invest in accessible tourism and to take into account that people are different, people need different things. We, on our website, we also have these links to Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn and so forth, so I hope you'll always be able to find us wherever we are, and we'll hope to work with you and bring some of our knowledge, some of our experience to your business. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Have you been planted here to ask questions? Is that it?
Yeah, I was planted, yes.
Great.
Because
you have good questions. Go ahead.
Because I exploit each and every opportunity to learn something new.
I know.
Because each day can bring us new opportunities and new projects.
Good.
So I'm very interested if you have the special travel agencies in Europe that are specialized in in such sort of tourism, and if you can recommend with closed eyes some of them.
Yes, well, we're going to hear about that from Katarina, who's going to show you the directory of accessible tourism suppliers, and amongst those are travel agents and tour operators who specialize in this field. So I think you'll get the answers there.
Thank you.
Thank you.